Hello, social media. I think it's time for me to post a video to respond to some irritated comments about one of my posts. And first thing I will say in the very beginning on this is, if you don't know me and you don't know my origin, my beginnings, where I came from, how I grew up, the things that I've dealt with in my life to get to where I am, and no different than the things anyone else has dealt with to get to where they are, it's pretty hard to just reach out and make assumptions and judgments on people's character when you don't know a lot about... Come on. I don't want all that going through above me. When you don't know a lot about their beginnings. And I'm not saying that I was dirt poor, because I wasn't. I was raised in a very middle-class family. Divorced parents, yeah, so that's pretty much a product of my generation. The parents that stayed together in the 80s are few and far between. I know more people whose parents are divorced than people whose parents are married. So the institution of marriage obviously was not an important thing to my family or many of other families. Now, that's not to say that families that did stay together are any better or worse off, but it could have something to do with it. That said, let's talk about the root of the point, and that is my opinions on the homeless. Let's get it right out there. And not just the homeless, but these drug addicts, these people with opioid addictions. Well, don't judge. Yeah, don't judge because you don't know their situation. Well, yeah, you don't know my situation. Nobody knows anyone's situation, no matter how well you think you know a person, unless you grew up side by side with them and followed every step of the way along their life to understand why they've formulated the beliefs and opinions that they've formulated. We're not going to agree with each other on a lot of things. Hell, I don't even agree with my own father on his political views, and he knows it. I'm not very vocal about it because I choose my battles, and I'm not going to get into a big fight with him over his politics. But something that a lot of people don't know about me is I did not attend a single day of college in my life. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I didn't get a degree. I did start out at community college, but circumstances as they were did not allow me the ability to finish. And quite simply, at the time, I wasn't cut out for it. I didn't have the mindset for school. I didn't have the time, and I had other priorities, and so that's fine. I got the only formal training in anything that I've ever had in my schooling during electronics training in the Air Force, and I attribute a lot of the values that I've lived by to the basics of what I learned when it came to my own independence and my need to execute things in such a way to complete tasks to get to what I needed to get to. And I didn't what do they call that, advance in rank very far. I wasn't on a path to become the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force or even a Staff Sergeant by any means. I was going to do my 4 years, get my training, and go back to my happy life. And for the most part, that's what I've done. But a lot of things have happened along the way that have put different detours or put me on different paths compared to where I thought I would be. But again, back to my thing about the homeless. A lot of times you'll see me post a picture of somebody and standing on a street corner with a sign, or somebody that's doing something that it's like, the guy with the cell phone, for example. The other day I posted a picture of a guy with a cell phone, nice smartphone, and I'm thinking, yeah, why does he have a $500 cell phone if he's not able to afford a place to live unless he's lying about it? And again, I don't know his situation, but just like you or anybody else, I'm going to jump to my own conclusions about what that guy is doing with his life and why he's on the street corner. And if it's opioid addiction, that's got him there, then you know what? That tells me that along the way, he was wronged or failed by someone, or somehow the system wronged him. Because if you're on an opioid issue where your body needs those medications to continue to function, and that originated from being put on those medications for pain, and you somehow walked away from your pain management, or you circumstantially were not able to get those pain medications, so you started using an alternative means of getting your crystal meth or your heroin or whatever it is you're doing. I won't say that's your own problem, but your support network has failed you. The people around you in your life that you have chosen to associate with have failed you, and maybe that's because of your poor judgment, or it's because of poor influences in your life that have put you in a weak spot, so you'll listen to people that are sending you down the wrong path. Or you've gone to desperate measures in your life because desperate situation, and therefore you ended up dealing with somebody who gave you a quick fix. And I'm not using that term loosely, like a fix for drugs, but essentially that's what it was. Someone found you a way to ease your pain for cheap, and so you got in that trap. But that trap is a vicious trap, because now it puts you in a spot where you're homeless. It puts you in a spot where you need that pick-me-up to get to where you need to be, and you put yourself in that spot by the choices you've made and the people you've surrounded yourself with. And anyone who really wants out of that lifestyle or wants out of that situation, they can do it. They just need some ambition, and they need to get help from the right people. So, I really think that standing on a street corner miles and miles away from wherever a shelter is, or wherever those services and resources might be, is just a means to continue doing what you're doing. And it doesn't give you any kind of hope, or it doesn't give you any kind of relief or help for the problems that you're facing. And another thing that really gets me is these guys on the street corner with their signs saying that they're a homeless veteran, and they need my help, and they're trying to make me believe that somehow I should be compassionate toward their needs because they're a homeless vet. When someone walks up to me and asks me for money, I tell you what I say. I say, I'm a disabled veteran and I work for a living. What's your excuse? Because I want to know. And if that person has some sort of legitimate excuse, I might be inclined to give them a donation or share some money with them for whatever reason. If they're legitimately homeless or have a situation that compelled them to ask me for a handout, and I feel like I'm in a generous mood, I might help them. But I'll give you another example. There's a guy named Mark that I know his first name because I see him all the time at the post office where I go to get my mail. And he's out there with the Real Change newspaper. And the first couple times I saw him there, I just kind of ignored it. One of the times I was there, he walked up to me and, kind of said, hey, what do they call that? The Real Change newspaper is $2. And so basically I gave him $2, took a copy of the paper and said thanks. And I said, hey, what's your name, man? And he told me his name was Mark. And I remembered that. So now every time I'm at the post office, if I see him there, I always take a minute and I say, hey, Mark, how's it going? How you going? And he tells me, if he's doing good or having a bad day or whatever. And the thing about the guys that sell the Real Change newspaper, as I understand it, they have to physically go down to the place where those newspapers are distributed. They have to pay to buy those papers, and they buy them at a reduced rate. And I don't know what that reduced rate is, but they're allowed to keep whatever they earn on those papers. So from time to time, when I see Mark at the post office, I buy a newspaper from him. And occasionally I just say, hey, you know what? Here's $2, man. Keep my copy for someone else. And I just give him $2. And, at least he's doing something. He's not standing there with a sign in his hand saying, oh, please, anything helps, God bless. Don't put this whole God bless mentality out there and try and put it on God, because it's not God's problem that you're homeless. If God didn't want you to be homeless, then you wouldn't be homeless, because God loves everybody, so how could he put one person out on the street and another person in a multi-million-dollar estate? I don't know. That's something that we'll never know until Judgment Day, if you believe in that thing. If you believe that you'll meet your maker someday when you die, then you can ask God at that point why homeless people were put in that position. If you believe in that, then maybe they're serving a penance of some kind for some sort of thing that they did wrong in a past life, or something they did along the way that put them there. It's a penance, bad karma, whatever you want to call it. I know I'm all over the board with my thoughts. That's because I'm just impromptu, off the cuff. This is not prepared. I'm just driving and speaking what comes to mind as I head down the road. So yeah, what else? Let's see. Oh yeah, so back to Mark. So I saw him about 3 days before Christmas up at the post office last Christmas, and I just walked up to him and I handed him a $20 bill, and I said, you know what, man? Buy yourself a nice meal or something, because I know I'm going to be having a meal with my family for Christmas, and I don't know if you have any kind of family or any friends that you can hang out with, but here's $20. Put it towards something you need. Merry Christmas. And, he appreciated that, and I'm glad I gave it to him, because, it's $20 that was hard-earned for me, but I didn't need it right there at that moment. He needed it worse than I did. So, for that moment in time, my generosity went out to someone that I had made a connection with. So don't say that I don't connect with homeless people, because I've looked into it myself. I'm not going to take on every single one as my personal project. Now, back to my personal life. I'm not going to go into all the details of what's brought me to this point in my life. Let's just say I got married when I was in the Air Force. A couple years into it, it obviously wasn't working out, and I didn't want my son to have to bounce from place to place to place, which often happens when a mother and a wife takes herself out of a marriage for whatever reason and moves, because a lot of times those women they end up making a lot of choices along the way to try and seek and find stability, and it's a difficult measure for them to come upon, is to find a stable living environment. And so I decided, when I realized that my ex-wife was dating a convicted felon, that I was not going to let my son grow up in that environment. So I hired an attorney, and I spent nearly $30,000 on legal fees before eventually realizing that attorney was doing his best but was getting no traction, because my ex's attorney was finding all these crazy loopholes that were stymieing the case and basically just trying to bleed me dry on legal fees. So I came in contact with another attorney who I happen to know from growing up in high school. She took my case and got it before the judge, and basically I ended up custody of my son on an out-of-court settlement. Let's just leave it at that. Fast forward the last 20 years, he's now almost 26. I got custody of him in 96. So 22 years ago, we've had a long ride over the last 22 years, and I've had some support from family on my financial situation that definitely has advanced my living situation. Things that I probably could have gotten by without, but I have those things for whatever reason. My car. I don't need to be driving a 2016 GLC 300 Mercedes-Benz, but because my dad chose to be generous with some of his money when he wasn't generous with it when I was at the age to need it for college and other things, he felt his money was better spent on his family at the time that when he was married to someone other than my mother. And so I didn't get a lot of help when I was younger. And so now I think this is kind of one of those things where I don't want to call it the cliche sound of quid pro quo, but now that I'm far enough along in my adult life where I can't really go back to school, I could, but I've got a lot of other things going on in my life that prevent me from going back to school for a bachelor's degree or whatever certifications that I might want to get. I've maintained a very low profile, not a lavish lifestyle. I don't vacation all the time like a bunch of people that I know that I grew up with. I don't have season tickets to all the sporting events where I'm down at the stadium every weekend watching the Mariners or the Seahawks. I'll just sit in my living room and watch the Seahawks on my used TV that I bought for cheap. Somebody might have gone out and spent $3,000 on a 60-inch plasma when it was brand new. Well, I hung onto my tube TV until I got an opportunity to get a used flat screen. I don't go to the department stores and buy new clothes. I go thrift store shopping and I find lightly used name brand stuff that I like, and I buy my stuff secondhand. I buy my computers secondhand. I don't buy things brand new because I'm not going to feed the corporate consumer animal that is, capitalism. Yeah, we work in a capitalistic society. We live in that society. And a lot of people think that there should be social programs for everything that make everything equal to everybody, where everything that's out there is completely free of charge and that you don't have to work for it. And I get that in some capacities there needs to be some base level services for people. As a veteran of the military and even 4 years active duty, I have medical care from the VA that is pretty damn good. I don't have dental care, but I have my basic medical, and it's definitely saved my ass some expenses along the way. They do a really good job with their medical care for veterans, and that's why when I see these guys on the side of the street saying they're a homeless disabled vet, I just shake my head, because clearly they haven't taken advantage of the services that are available to them. And there's brochures all over the VA that says if you're a veteran in need, to call this number and they'll help you make things happen. Doesn't mean they're going to set you up in a deluxe apartment and give you everything you need to live on, but they're at least going to help you get off the street. And I get that. I get that situation. It's kind of a tough endeavor to be stuck on the street, whether you're a veteran or whether you're just some random person. But anybody with a sign that says they're a homeless vet needs to consider going to the VA and asking for help. And if the VA hasn't helped them after that point, that's when you have a beef with your local Veterans Administration, and you have to obviously have the strength and the wherewithal to follow up on that. Hell, I know a military veteran that was in for 10 years and missed his opportunity to use his GI Bill. And when he went back and petitioned the VA for funding for re-education, he was able to go back and get a bachelor's degree in a variety. Well, I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want to basically let anybody know, keep it anonymous. But let's just say he got a free ride and still has some scholarships or some debts to pay back for some student loans that were required. But his living expenses were paid while he was going back to school. And he made a conscious effort to do that. But, the point I'm making is there's help for people that want it. And there's help for people that are willing to do the research to get the help. The problem is most of these people, I don't think they want the help. There's been countless attempts by organizations within the city of Seattle that have reached out to these homeless people, and a lot of them, they've already said they don't want help. They'd just rather be out on the street. If that's what they want to do, then they've basically lowered the bar for themselves significantly, and basically their support network is that of a bunch more people that want to keep pulling them down and bringing them into that situation. With a good support network of friends and family and people that aren't doing those things that are going to bring you down, you're going to do a lot better. And I'm not saying that you have to abandon your friends. I'm saying that you have to seek out opportunities to do better. And if you're not smart enough to do that, then you had better hope that the people you surround yourself are, because other than that, you're just going to be a pawn in their game, and you're going to be a foot soldier for their army. It's a difference between owning a business and running it and being an employee of a business where you go to work for a paycheck every day and you do what you're told to do in order to earn that paycheck. It's a big difference when you're the guy who's earning that paycheck versus being the guy who's bringing in the money to keep that organization running so those employees can get paid. That's a big difference between being an owner, operator of a business versus working in a 9-to-5 or a 8-to-4 or whatever your shift is. You're basically there to punch a clock and get a paycheck. You're there to go out and get commission sales and get a paycheck. Even a commission sales guy, he's got to work on his own terms. If he's not producing, he's not going to get paid. So there's very few commission sales positions that are going to pay you a salary just to be there in the office. They want to see your support, your performance is based on, your merit of what you bring in. You're not going to get extra money just to sit at your desk and do nothing. If you're not producing, get results, you're probably not going to be there that long. An independent consultant, it's a salesperson, just like in real estate or anything else. You're making a commission to be there, and chances are you're not going to be there very long, or you're going to be out on your butt with nothing if you don't produce. And being out on your butt with nothing comes right back around to what we're talking about here, or what I'm talking about here. And that's if you let yourself spiral down to the point where you're homeless, you've given up and you've let things go too far. Now, why have you done that? Okay, mind-altering substance, psychological disorder, some other sort of a diagnosis, clinical depression, bipolar disorder, whatever. Again, it's always because you've lost track of your way and you're not using your support network of people, and therefore you've abandoned them, you've alienated them, you've pushed them away. I've got another friend of mine who has a struggle with alcohol, and I've tried time and time again to be there for him and to help him out and to do the right thing, and he constantly pushes back and puts himself in a position where you don't want to help the guy. Some of you are going, yeah, I know who that guy is. But it's true. A lot of you that know that guy, when he was locked up at Harborview for an incident that put him in the psych ward, a lot of you wrote him off and didn't want to be his friend and didn't think that it was worth your time to visit him or talk to him or let him know that you still gave a shit about him. And I was one of the few people besides his own brother who actually went to visit him in the psych ward and tell him things are going to be okay, get through this. And he did inevitably get through it, but it still put him at odds with a whole lot of other people. And then he came out of there and tried to clean up his life. Well, no, he didn't. He moved away and then came back and tried to clean up his life and did it for a while, but secretly kept drinking behind the backs of the people that cared about him, that were giving him a place to stay. And eventually he got kicked out of that place where the family member was letting him stay. And he came running to me. Oh, I need to stay in your RV, man. You got space. Let me stay here. Well, okay, I'll let you stay there, but nobody rides for free, brother. You got to come up with some cash, pay your rent, and I'm going to charge you $20 a day, just like I'd charge any other person who's renting out my RV, because I have another friend who uses it periodically when he comes to town to save the cost of a hotel, which is $100 a day if you're lucky. So yeah, so I figured $20 a day is fair. Oh no, that's too much money. You're raping me. Blah blah blah. Oh, I need this and that and the other thing, and I can't afford to pay you that much. So he was there for about 3 months, and even then I gave him work to do, so he didn't have to come up with money out of pocket. But when someone says that it's too much, and you know damn well it's not, it's clearly their problem, and they're not willing to come to terms with what they need to do to have a roof over their head. Food, different story. You can go spend your money on food when you have money, but you got to be able to do something to make that money. And if you don't have a skill and all you can do is stand on the corner with a cardboard sign, you stoop to new lows, because I don't know anybody that can't push a broom or empty a garbage can or pick up trash or do whatever the lowest job that's out there is. I mean, there's plenty of opportunities to get jobs in our market. I got a glare on the screen there. If anybody wants a job, they'll find one. You got to clean yourself up a little bit, but you should have never gotten into the position where you're that down and out and destroyed that you can't look nice to go out and ask for work. And there's places hiring all over. I see signs all the time they're now hiring. And even if it's minimum wage, I don't care. If you can't make it on minimum wage in the city of Seattle, then you got a problem, because you could certainly go to an outlying area. You don't have to be in the city. You can take a bus. But if you want to resort to packing up a tent and camping in a commune next to the freeway, that's your choice. Nobody's going to stop you from doing that. But it doesn't mean that I have to feel obligated to help you and give you a handout every time I see you. And I'm going to certainly call attention to that, because it bugs the shit out of me that you're not out there making something of yourself happen. And naysayers will be like, oh, they can't, they're not capable. I just told you why they're capable. Then don't stay here if you can't find a job here. You move on. You go find a job elsewhere, and you make something happen for yourself in another environment. You don't have to be stuck in the city of Seattle homeless on a street corner. You just don't. It's that freaking simple. The fact of the matter is, you don't have to be sitting on the streets of Seattle with your sign and your tent. You can go somewhere else where there's work. And I'm sure that someone will help you find work. If it's there to be had, you'll find it. And that you don't have to go up the road that far. I mean, I know somebody else who said, oh yeah, the homeless people in Bellingham. These homeless people in Bellingham are just the same as homeless people in Seattle. They're not looking, or they have this horrible addiction that still isn't able to get corrected because they're not willing to come to terms with their addiction. Let's face the facts. You clear up the problems in your life, you do what you got to do to get ahead in life, and you make shit happen and that you want to make happen, and you look out for yourself first. If you're not looking out for yourself first, then you know what? You're going to end up falling victim to something. Something in your life is going to fall apart if you're not taking care of your issues first. Your responsibilities come before anyone else. And those responsibilities, if you're a parent, your responsibilities are your children, keeping a roof over their head. If you have children, like I said, as a parent, those are your responsibilities. When I say looking out for yourself, I don't mean being selfish and going out and putting alcohol in your body or putting drugs in your body. That's selfish, okay? Selfish is someone who cares about their good feeling before that of their family. And, I'm not saying that you have to give up everything that you like to do that's fun or enjoyable. Quite opposite. You just can't do it to an extreme, to the point that it puts you in a position where you're not capable of taking care of yourself and taking care of your responsibilities. Because that's really what it boils down to. If you take care of yourself and your responsibilities, you're not going to end up in a situation that puts you out on the goddamn street. Okay? Because if you end up on the street, you've been put there by circumstances that were within your control. Anybody who says that the circumstances that put them there is beyond their control is lying to themselves and looking for an excuse for why it's someone else's fault that they're sitting on the street corner. So they want to make it someone else's fault that they can't get off the street by asking for handouts. So I think I'm about done here. We're coming up on a 30-minute rant. And I hope you understand where I'm coming from this point forward, because I bust my ass for everything I have, and I give to the charitable contributions that I think are necessary, and I do a lot for nonprofit organizations at a reduced rate for the work that I put out. Thank you very much. You have a nice day.